All right, another episode of What the Teams Are Working On, February 2019 edition, although it did come out in March, so it is what it is. Well, let's talk about some of the goodies that are revealed to us today. We see that the Saga team is picking up a new project. We're hopefully finding out a little bit more about that. I'm excited to see what this becomes, because hopefully it kind of blossoms into something a little bit more intriguing than the Thrones of Bretonnia, and gets into maybe some of the more nittier and grittier portions of history. I mean, we had Empire, and we have a gap in between that with the Pike and Shot, so maybe a Saga version of Pike and Shot. Or maybe, and I know that's something that people have wanted for like years and years and years and years. I don't typically see a huge appeal to Pike and Shot, because it's kind of like a weird, skewed portion of history, but maybe an Alexander the Great saga where you're just kind of focusing on that, even though that was kind of a mini expansion attached to Rome 1. So I could see a lot of really cool options here for a saga game. You could even go into something along Three Kingdoms, that is in either the later period after the Three Kingdoms, or even the Han period before the Three Kingdoms. So a lot of things are open with the saga team. But moving on, we're going to go into the historical team with the Three Kingdoms. Now, of course, with the big delay and push from a March release date to a May release date, we might start to see some different things with Three Kingdoms. This is a really good picture here because it kind of is indicative of some of the things that people aren't really stoked on for the game. Biggest, of course, being the unit cards. Let me see if I can open this up in a new tab and get a better, nope. That's about as good as we're going to get. But I think one of the biggest problems I saw in my playthrough of Three Kingdoms is that you play through Rome, you play through Samurai, you play through Shogun, you play through Total War Warhammer, and you get these really awesome, very stylized unit cards. When you play Three Kingdoms, sure, you see the kind of approach that they were taking, right? That these are faceless armies, right? Your main focus is, of course, on your characters and your retinue. That was the kind of crux of the Three Kingdoms, was that you had these large conscript-based armies and less of an actual standard regimental style army like you did with a lot of the other civilizations of the time. The biggest focus of Three Kingdoms era was on their characters, which were highly trained, and these large showcases throughout history, especially Guan Yu, who goes on to become essentially the Chinese god of war. And I can see the approach, but it still just kind of, it lacks that overall stylization that the rest of the UI has. Like, I mean, these elements are constantly animating, and you can see these ink elements or these cloud elements constantly blooming and moving across the whole entire UI. And it's just kind of a flat portion of the game. So I'm excited to see if we maybe get that as a change. We'll see in things to come. It says right here, something about plums. Oh, here it is. Alongside the usual debugging and polishing business, we're seeing what else we can fit in, and there are definitely a few plum items on the list we've wanted to do, as well as a number that players are asking for. And I know that one of the bigger things that myself, Indie Pride, and some other influencers were talking about was changing the way that the battles look, right? It's very hard for you to distinguish who is on your side and who is on the enemy side. And you go from these very colorful regiments and very colorful units in Total War Warhammer, and even so in Shogun, right? The last real big historical launch alongside Rome. What was it first? Rome 2 was earlier than Shogun. In which case you can see these really cool standards and your really cool flags that denote which faction you're doing. I think the Attila way of doing things, that is the most recent historical version, is Attila, and I guess I just forget about it because I never played Attila. I don't own Attila. I don't really ever want to play it, but my point being that the Attila way of fighting things with, or combat with little tiny icons, is not very engaging. It's actually really hard for me to distinguish between friend or foe too, because it's just a small little blip on the battlefield. So hopefully that is one of the things that they address. Some of the other things here they talk about are the way that they're doing the new auto-resolver. We can see here, with our superior force, our advisors predict a Pyrrhic victory. And they're saying that if they predict a Pyrrhic victory, you're actually going to get a Pyrrhic victory, versus Total War Warhammer, where you have a nondescript balance of power bar, and you press the button, and it could be any number of random elements that actually kick in. And you get a good idea of, okay, your predicted casualties are going to be medium, whereas theirs are medium as well. So I'm all for that. I think that the auto-resolve is a huge portion of the Total War games that people don't really talk a lot about. I mean, when I'm playing a Total War game, yeah, I like to jump in and get really into the battles, but auto-resolve is such a huge portion, just as much as the battles are, because you get to a point, especially when your empire gets massive, that you're like, oh, I don't want to deal with this full stack of Empire Spearmen. It's just not worth my time. Auto-resolve. And if your auto resolve is shoddy and it's not trustworthy, you don't want to use it. And then you're going to waste time in a 20 or 30-minute battle that is just going to bog you down. You're like, all right, well, I've wasted that time. I'm just going to jump off for a bit and take a break or stuff like that. Like, I think that auto resolve being in kind of a shit place as it is in Total War Warhammer 2 causes a lot of issues. And I'm glad that they're kind of addressing that right here. And it is a lot more transparent. And I'm all for that, all for it. So hopefully we'll see some other goodies coming with Three Kingdoms. I mean, they added an additional two and a half, almost 3 full months into the release date of Three Kingdoms. So hopefully we'll get a lot of really great polish here. I believe this says see you later or something like that. See you soon or something. Those of you that can read it, you can tell me. Three Kingdoms' new content team is now in full work here, of course. You know, excellent progress having been made on the Yellow Turban Rebellion DLC. I'm curious to see what we'll get, if we'll get stuff that has to do with maybe Korea as a focus for the new content team, or maybe focusing on some of the other characters. I don't imagine that there are many characters from Three Kingdoms that are being left out of this content, or of Three Kingdoms as a whole. It seems really difficult to do a game called Three Kingdoms without having all of the big players of Three Kingdoms. So we'll see if there are any ones that are missing once we actually have the game in front of us and we can see which characters are entirely in it. Now, I know a lot of you are going to be the most excited for this. Fantasy new content team Warhammer 2. This pretty much just says they're powering away at a lowered pack DLC, which we can confirm will be the next content released for the Total War series. Also, you may have noticed that we sometimes include old world updates alongside our DLC releases, and this DLC is no exception, as we are working on a bespoke new feature for one of the Warhammer 1 races that'll have you bending the knee. Bending the knee to the lady. There's a grail here. This is a really awesome little fleur-de-lis. I couldn't think of the goddamn name of it. So maybe we're looking at a big Bretonnia overhaul. What do I think about that? Okay. My opinion is that of the Warhammer 1 races, Bretonnia has the best campaign, hands down. In fact, of all the Warhammer 1 campaigns I've played, Bretonnia is the only one that I've beat 100%. In fact, between Total War Warhammer 1 and 2, I haven't even beaten a High Elves campaign, and I've beaten a Bretonnia campaign. To give you an idea of how well and streamlined I think the Bretonnia campaign is. Well, Vampire Coast one is extremely streamlined. It's so well done. It's so easy, so succinct. Love it. But I think the big thing here is, what could they really add to Bretonnia? I mean, it's already in a really great place. I think the campaign is very fun. It's very engaging. You can go a lot of different directions in the Mortal Empires. What could they really do? Well, if you take a look at the mechanics of the tabletop version of Bretonnia, the Knightly Vows were a little bit more important. And I think that's something I would really like to see. The Knightly Vows in Total War Warhammer are more like, not benchmarks, but they're goals that you reach, and once you reach it, just okay, you've reached that as a point of progression, more so than a point of development for your character. So if you were a knight who took the Knightly Vow, then yeah, you of course had Knights of the Realm and blah 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 blah. The way it works in Total War Warhammer, it just means that you can get more you can recruit Knights of the Realm, you can actually have them in your army, you get a bunch of bonuses towards them, so on and so forth. Well, it was a little bit different in tabletop. You could take a peasant's vow and then be on foot, and it forced your character to be on foot. He couldn't take a mount, but he got bonuses to being on foot. So maybe this is a system where we see those knightly vows reorganized and strengthened and kind of fit the narrative of Bretonnia a little bit better. Like I said, right now, they're just simply points of progression. You're never going to want a lord that doesn't have one of the knightly vows, right? So maybe these vows get an overhaul. I'd love to see something that is akin to the Errantry Wars, or some sort of quest for the Grail. Every single knight of Bretonnia aspires to become a Grail Knight. And to become a Grail Knight, you have to first become a questing knight, to take up a quest to hunt for the Grail. When you're a Knight of the Realm, of course, you're just a simple feudal Knight of the Realm. It's not until a Grail Knight, it's not until you become a Grail Knight that you really kind of become, you know, that's the thing that everyone wants to be in Bretonnia. So maybe there's going to be a system including that, something that kind of makes you go on some sort of repeated quests. And we're seeing this kind of come more and more with Total War Warhammer 2 races. These kind of individualistic goals per character or per faction that change the way the game is played. You know, when you take a look at Vampire Coast, you have your whole entire Shantyverse thing. You have the whole digging for treasure. You have all these side narratives that are attached to the main narrative. When you look at Tomb Kings, you have the Books of Nagash and the pursuit of all those. And I think that with the addition of the Sword of Cain, we get another side narrative to the main narrative of the Vortex campaign. And I think that that's what's going to be present here in a Bretonnia overhaul, is what kind of narrative or side narrative can we create for Bretonnia that really makes a lot of sense? And what doesn't make more sense than Knights of the Realm than questing? So I would love to see something like that kind of makes sense along the lines of sending them for the lady, or bending. It says that you'll have you bending the knee, so maybe this is, you know, bending the knee in pursuit. That's the kind of thing, is once they find the grail, they bow in reverence to the lady blesses them, and whoa, you're a grail knight and your fucking penis shines gold. You know, that's how it is. I don't know, I didn't write the rules of penis shining gold. Thanks Matt Ward. But I'd like to see something again along those lines that plays heavily into the questing aspects, or the vows, or just something along the lines of Bretonnia that makes it less about the narrative you are creating as the player and more about the narrative that the game helps you to create, or the game kind of helps you along the lines of. Like, again, an errantry war down to the south, right? Into the Southlands, maybe purging Khemri, or reuniting with the Knights of Origio, something along those lines. Stuff that kind of drives you away from just simply uniting Bretonnia. But we know we saw a nice big launcher update here pretty recently. A nice little overhaul to that. I think it's an improved UI, ability to change the load order of mods, latest news trailer, blah 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 blah. Also, we get a fantasy team pre-production, pretty much just saying that they've moved into mocap studio and they're working on kind of making the animations for what will probably be Total War Warhammer 3. I don't know what else they'd be working on fantasy team wise. If it was like a, holy shit, imagine if the whole time this was just Lord of the Rings and they were going to start two big fantasy IPs alongside one another. That'd be fucking huge. But if this is going to be the mocap for an ogre, I think he has quite a bit of weight to gain, and he needs to slouch more. He needs to slap his belly a little bit more, and there's not enough grease on him. Not nearly enough grease on him. But they did say here, don't get any funny ideas, that picture above is unrelated to recent endeavors. It looks like he was probably related to maybe a Shadow Warrior. Those are two weapons that look like High Elf weapons, because they have that kind of taper then going out to a larger blade. So this could have been either like a Wood Elf or a High Elf mocap, probably. I could probably see something like that. Then we have a secret project with the Access team. So who's to say what this could be? I mean, we see all the different all the Total War icons on here, right? We see like Empire here, we see Three Kingdoms, we see the Golden Horde, or a Medieval, Shogun, a Barbarian? I don't know what that is. That could be Napoleon. This is probably something along the lines of like Rome or Greece. But not really sure what this is. The Access Team's project is ramping up testing this month as we get ready to announce later this year. Announcement later this year? For an announcement later this year? We're very excited to share our secret project with all of you, as it's a new genre for Total War and has been a real passion project for the developers involved. Didn't they talk about doing a card game? I thought that was like a big rumor that Total War was doing some sort of card game, and this would be a new genre in the Total War. And if we're looking at this, white is common, silver or bronze is uncommon, silver is rare, gold is like unique, and there's like an orange gold is like a super unique. I could see that. I could see that being the icon for a new card game if they were to release something like that. I could totally. That's the rage right now, right? Elder Scrolls has got one. Magic the Gathering Arena is big. You have Hearthstone, which has got a huge market share of all that action. So I could see something like that. So my vote is something like along the lines of a card game. These could be like the wheel of rarity of cards. I could easily see that. But beyond Total War, we see that they're kind of talking about the brand new FPS that they'll be working on as well. But for the most part, guys, that is it. So let me know in the comment section below. What do you think this secret project is? What do you think this mocap is actually for? Like I said, we already know it's not really for this. And what do you think the new fantasy, new content team is talking about with an old Warhammer 1 race that they're working on? My vote is heavily in Bretonnia. And again, I'd love to see some mechanics that play into the narrative of Bretonnia. One thing I didn't talk about with Bretonnia is their penchant for a large amount of special characters. In 6th edition, 5th, 6th, and 7th edition, well, not 7th as much, but 5th and 6th edition, mainly 4th too, you had all these varying special characters of Bretonnia. all these Duke Jared and all these different dukes and all these different archdukes. And I'd love to see that kind of come into the game as well. Maybe like a faction system, not a faction system, but a title system where your character can actually rank up in its title. That would be really interesting if it wasn't, of course, you know, your king. Like, you take a look at some of the things that we've gotten with Vampire Coast, where you've got specific characters you can recruit, and those characters have designated roles. So it'd be cool if you could say, okay, I'm going to recruit a Duke, and the Duke is really good at maybe errantry wars, or I'm going to recruit this style of character, and this character is good at this thing, so on and so forth. I really liked that direction with Vampire Coast, and I'd love to see that somewhat replicated across all of Bretonnia, because Bretonnia again has access to so many different types of kings, dukes, and so on and so forth in the many duchies of Bretonnia. But as always, guys, thanks so much for watching here today. Hopefully this gave you a little good rundown of what is to come and the tasty things to come here. We should hopefully be seeing some goods from Three Kingdoms, and hopefully this DLC quite soon here. It is March, so like I was saying in my prediction video, we're probably looking at a mid-April launch date, anywhere from the 16th to the 18th if my math is correct. But I'm not a mathematician nor a magician, so we'll see what happens. But as always, guys, thanks for watching and take care.